Welcome back to the Resolution Room. This is a space where we slow down the moment before reaction and take a closer look at what's really driving conflict beneath the surface. Each episode invites you into conversations that challenge assumptions, expand perspective, and offer practical ways to move through tension with more clarity and intention. Whether you're navigating conflict in your relationships, your work, or within yourself, you're in the right place. Let's step into the room.
All right, Damian, can you please introduce yourself to the audience?
Well, Damian Bolton, born and raised in Lucedale, Mississippi, so therefore I am a country boy. Spent 11 years in the Army. After the Army, I founded a small organization called Team Think Big, mentoring high school students, and my mission there was to take them from the classroom to the boardroom. And from there, I pivoted and I founded an organization called Presidential Healthcare Group, where my long-term goal is to build or buy the first or second Black-owned hospital in the country.
Amazing. Okay. So let's just jump into the big picture of leadership, okay?
Mhm. Absolutely.
Um so you often talk about performance from the inside out. So
Mhm.
what does that really mean in practice?
Performing from the inside out, you have to master your inner world before you can master your outer world. And as a leader, you have to master what I call the high emotional bank account. And the high emotional bank account is comprised of two compartments, or three compartments. One is your self esteem, which is how you feel about yourself; your self confidence, which is how much you trust yourself; and your self image, and that is how you see yourself. But we access that through self awareness, and that is how we view ourselves. Excuse me, as a leader, you don't have to have it all together, but you need to know your strengths and weaknesses. So until you can master that, it'll be hard to lead and influence others, because I would define leadership as the process of influencing others to accomplish a mission by providing purpose, direction, and motivation. But if you don't have it together internally, how can you provide purpose? How can you provide direction? And last but not least, how can you motivate?
Mm. Okay, I want to jump a little deeper into the self-esteem versus confidence. I think there's a lot of people out there who will come off or consider themselves fairly confident people, and
Mhm.
yet they don't make decisions that support a person with high esteem. Does that make
Correct.
sense?
That
Thinking
makes
about, like, you think that could be anything from like the people we date to
correct.
the people we let around us.
Correct.
Um, what is that? Talk about that a little bit.
So there will be synergy in who you say you are or who you believe yourself to be and the decisions you make. For example, I was talking to someone, and we were talking about her ex boyfriend, and this guy, he was just not a good person, and he was not the type of man that she described that she liked. And I said, well, based on your decisions, I said I would have to use deductive reason to tell me that's not how you see yourself. I said online you say, I'm a queen. I said, but you're not making queen decisions. So there will always be synergy with how we see ourselves, which is our self-image, how we feel about ourselves, our self-esteem, and the decisions we make outwardly.
Mm, okay. And you kind of talked about already how that works together
Mhm.
to make our whole selves. How
Absolutely.
do we, if we're lacking one or the other, whether it's the confidence or the esteem, how do we build upon each of those differently?
Well, so going back to what I said about self-awareness, because no one has it all together. But for example, like, I love working with people, but okay, I'll say this. I love coming on podcasts and talking, but I could never be a podcast host. All the technical stuff, I couldn't do that. Somebody would have to do it for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that doesn't mean that I'm not confident. It means that I'm aware of that limitation. So therefore, I would have to put someone around me. For example, Steve Jobs said, "We don't hire smart people to tell them what to do. We hire smart people so they can tell us what to do." Now, this is Steve Jobs. This is a brilliant and wealthy man, but yet he's telling you, "I bring in people to tell me what to do." Yes, he has confidence, but he also has self-awareness. Also, when the president comes into office, the first thing that he does is he put his cabinet together, a bunch of experts around him that can feel his weaknesses.
Right.
So having self-awareness, that is very, very important. And especially, like, whether it's a business relationship, whether it's a personal relationship, you have to have self-awareness. Have you ever used Jahari's window?
Mm-mm.
Jahari's window is pretty much it's an assessment tool that shows you your blind spots.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Okay.
absolutely.
Let's look that up. Okay. Um, and so What are some common ways that leaders unintentionally make emotional withdrawals from their teams?
Some common ways that leaders
Hmm.
unintentionally make emotional withdrawals from their teams.
And this
Uh,
is building on your emotional bank, yeah.
Sure, absolutely. So one way that a leader can make or make emotional withdrawals from their team, first and foremost, as a leader, you have to know your team members. You have to understand their skill sets. So if I have a team member and I put them in a position or a scenario that doesn't play to their strengths, then yeah, that could make them grow, but it also could make them crumble. So it's important that to understand your team members and understand their left and right limitations and put them in a position where they can thrive, you know.
I love that. And I think I personally have struggled with that in a past position where I just felt like it was almost too much emphasis on the few weaknesses that I had. Yeah, I'm
Huh?
gonna say few.
Yeah,
And not enough attention paid to where I was striving, like put me more in this if you see that I'm doing good work here.
right,
And yeah, I like to think I'm not a person who just like crumbles under pressure, but it was a little disorienting to always feel like you're not doing a good job when you know you're filling up space in so many other places that are not getting attention.
right. Have you ever worked with ProSci?
ProSci, are you gonna just tell me all the random tools that I'm not using?
So ProSci is a they have a change management tool called ADCAR. And
Okay.
ADCAR is an acronym for awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement, right? So knowledge does not always transfer to ability. For example,
Mm,
I have knowledge of basketball, but I don't have the ability of Steph Curry.
right.
I have knowledge of football, but I don't have the ability, of Lamar Jackson. So as a
Hmm.
leader, I need to understand that about my team and my team members.
Hmm.
Understand where they have knowledge at, give them the right tools, give them the right systems, the right procedures, and the right training, so that that knowledge can transfer over to ability. That's how we develop new leaders, right?
Right, right. And how can leaders rebuild trust once that account feels depleted?
That's a great question. How can they rebuild trust? Um, I think being transparent. Also, like most leaders, they'll show their team members that they're Superman, but the team members need to often see Clark Kent, right?
Okay.
Right? They need to see Clark Kent sometimes. They need to see their development. Like, hey, I made this same mistake because being a leader is really about resiliency, right?
Mhm.
It's all about resiliency. So showing your team members that and showing them, hey, you know what? You made this mistake, but how can we pivot from that? Because
Yeah.
it's all about growth.
I love that because, again, it's making me reminisce. I think that I don't know if it's just a timing gap,
Hmm.
but it seems like leaders forget what it's like to be at the starting point. So
Hmm.
therefore, they don't know how to talk to themselves 10
Right.
years ago versus like
Absolutely.
where they are now and remembering that it took me this long to even be able to do this.
Yeah. And also understanding how your team members learn, like for example, like I tend to be very extreme, but as first of all, I love transformational leadership because transformational leaders, they show each individual what their skill set is and they show them how their particular part of the mission impacts the overall scope of the mission, right?
Mhm,
So
mhm.
understanding how this individual learns, and when I understand how you learn, well, that's how I'm going to teach and give you the information, which is more efficient and is going to help you to grow.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
So if I'm a visual learner, then that's how you have to teach me. If you're not teaching me in that capacity, I'm probably not going to retain the information, which is going to hinder my development.
Right, right. Talk to me about some of what the military taught you about leadership that business environments often overlook.
um wow. So there's the most important thing that I learned in the military is always to be prepared. Pre is when you do it, but prepare is what you do, right? So everything has to be done before. Like, for example, if we have an inspection next week, I'm probably going to do maybe two pre-inspections on my soldiers' equipment before that. And if we get to the inspection and my soldiers have failed, then it is my fault.
Mm,
Everything goes back to the leader, right?
mhm,
Everything goes back to the leader. So
mhm,
so being prepared is the most important thing.
mhm.
And
And
also
go ahead.
also understanding what is the desired outcome. You know, understanding what is the desired outcome, and that's going to also impact what we're looking for during those pre-inspections.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay. And then where do leaders tend to confuse control with real leadership?
So I think that varies. For example, okay, in the military, there are some things that will be considered leadership that in the civilian world will consider to be control.
Okay.
Simply because in the military, I don't have time to ask questions because somebody's life is on the line. I have to give directives, right? But if we're in the boardroom, excuse me, if we're in the boardroom, then that's going to have to vary a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if as a leader in the boardroom, if you trust your personnel, if you vetted them properly, if you train them properly, you have to trust their skill set and allow them to develop. You can't bubble wrap them because that's going to stunt their growth as a leader, as a young leader.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then I guess from your transition from the military to organizational change, you've now worked with large scale
Mhm,
organizations and specifically on transformation.
mhm.
So where do most organizations get stuck? Let's start there.
Well, there is executive misalignment. So there has to be executive alignment is the prerequisite for change in any organization. The leadership at the top has to be on the same page. Going back to what I said when the president brings in his cabinet, all of those cabinet members, they are in alignment with the president's vision. And if you're not, you don't get selected for the cabinet, right? So there has to be executive alignment. So oftentimes organizations fail because there may not be executive alignment. And going back to what I said about ADCAR, awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. Most change initiatives fail simply because lack of awareness. And oftentimes it's not lack of awareness of what needs to change, it's lack of awareness of what happens if the changes are not made.
Go a little deeper on that.
Yeah, my mom used to always say, she used to say, if these dishes not washed when I get home, somebody get the whooping. So it wasn't about the dishes being clean. That wasn't why I washed them. I washed them because I was aware of if the dishes are not washed, what was going to happen to me.
Mm,
So I
mm,
was trying to protect my downside. I was trying to protect the risk. So
right.
oftentimes change initiatives fail because, for example, the everyday worker or the mid-level manager, they may not be aware of the ROI. They may not be aware of low revenue. So they may not feel compelled to take action or to change as quickly as the top executives may need them to do it. You see what I'm saying? So
Right.
leaders have to be able to communicate that to them in a way where they understand. You see what I'm saying?
Okay. And then, so if you're in a position where there is misalignment at the
Mhm.
executive level, how do you then come help them build that alignment?
Yeah. So I believe in focus groups, right? I also believe in doing surveys, and I've also done tons of stakeholder interviews. I think,
Research, baby,
yeah,
research.
stakeholder interviews. Executives tend to be a little bit more forthcoming, and taking that information and compiling it together and triangulating it, and that way we can kind of get to the root cause analysis.
Right. Right. And I love all these words because I love, I'm a qual nerd, but
Absolutely.
the importance of, like you said, root cause analysis. Talk a
Mhm.
little bit about that and the difference between just fixing the symptom. So for example, I don't want to knock this down because we all do this. We all do the one-off workshops and the motivational speeches at these
Uh-huh.
companies, and it's great, and it could be a nice starting point to get people pumped up and start
Mhm.
doing the right thing. Next day at work, it's all forgotten, right?
Right,
So
right.
that's because the systems aren't in place. So what's the difference between doing that approach at a systems, I mean, at a symptoms level, and then
Mhm.
doing things at a root level?
Sure. Well, when you get to the root cause analysis, I believe, and people have challenged me on this, but I believe there can only be one root cause analysis. And the way you reverse engineer that, whatever the root cause is, if you take that root cause away, the problem should reemerge.
Should
That
reemerge.
yes,
Okay.
if you take away whatever you say the root cause is,
Hmm.
you should be able to turn it on like a light switch. If I
Okay.
move this, the problem comes back. If I implement it, the problem leaves. So now we understand that okay, these two items are showing synergy, and therefore this is our root cause analysis. For
Hmm.
example, I heard one guy say he said if you arrive at work late and they ask you why you were late, and you say, because I got stopped for speeding. Well, why were you speeding? Because I woke up late. Why did you wake up late?
Mm-hmm.
Because my alarm clock went off. I'm sorry, my alarm clock didn't go off.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so why didn't your alarm clock go off? Because it didn't have batteries in it. Why didn't it have batteries in it? Because I didn't go pick up the batteries. Okay, so there's a problem with your resources. So the
Mm-hmm.
mismanagement of your resources is why you were late for work, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
so therefore we can say, okay, this was our root cause analysis.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Like that. Okay. And so how do you then balance process efficiency with human complexity? Because this is one thing that I try to put focus back on in any organization, getting everything back to the human level. We are institutions have become this thing where it's almost bigger than any one person, and I get that it operates that way, but it's made up of individuals who keep it running, right? And
Right.
so I think it's hard sometimes to break things down in a way that it it uh it includes the human complexity to make it function. So how do you balance that?
Well, I think you have to look at um, okay, the culture of the organization, and you have to bring in people who align with that culture.
Mm-hmm.
For example, um, Chick-fil-A, they are known for the kindness of their people.
I'm so sorry. Everyone brings up Chick-fil-A. Whenever there's like a positive culture discussion, I swear they come up every time.
Okay, so they are as famous for their culture as they are the quality of their food.
Mm-hmm.
So either A, they have a great recruiting program and they recruit these really nice people, or B, they have an excellent training program where they bring in people and they can get them acclimated to their culture easily. So that's
Mm-hmm.
important, because I've worked in organizations where I didn't align with the culture. And I'm gonna be honest, early on in my career, I was just chasing money.
Mm-hmm.
I would just
Pay
look,
bills.
okay, this job pay all this money, I want it. And as I developed as a younger leader, I'm just like, man, like I really don't like it here. I really don't like it here. And
Mm-hmm.
that again, that's why I enjoy being an adjunct professor. The money is not amazing at all. It's nothing to call home about. But
Mm-hmm.
when I go to that campus, the culture is amazing, it's wonderful, and I can actually see my impact on those students' faces, right? So I think that's really, really important in terms of the human component of it, right? You have to bring in people who are in alignment with the organizational values.
Now I don't know if you can answer this, but the tricky thing I feel about that is, I mean, just like dating, everybody's on their best behavior at the interview. Like, how do I really know? How do you bring in quality people?
Hey, people interview great and work horribly, especially in dating. I can give you 2 hours on that.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's a forever complexity.
Yeah.
Um,
Now let me
okay.
say this though.
Yeah.
Also, in any relationship, whether it's professional, whether it's personal, romantic, there's
Yep.
always a risk. Like you can't get around that.
Yeah.
That's always a risk.
Mhm.
So I don't think that's a conundrum that does not go away. It's always a risk or a probability that this relationship may or may not work out for whatever reason. So I don't think there's ever going to be
Absolutely.
like a perfect answer to that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's completely fair.
Hmm.
Um, so when you're starting this kind of work, what signals tell you that a team is ready for change versus simply complying, checking the boxes, getting through?
Okay, so I mean, of course, I do a change readiness assessment,
Mhm.
but I look at the enthusiasm of the team,
Hmm.
right? Enthusiasm, like you can't fake that, especially for a long time, So if the team has enthusiasm, then I'm like, okay, this is going to work out because all this energy, it just needs to be channeled properly, right?
Mhm.
So and also if there's a good working, if the team members are able to communicate their gripes and complaints to the leader, that's also a good sign. It's a good sign that they trust the leader and that they can say, hey, this is what I feel, and they can express that to him or her. That's a sign of a good working relationship with the leader and the team members.
Mhm. Something interesting I just realized when I'm talking to a lot of people about this topic, they tend to talk about alignment just at the management level and then separately at the employee level, but not a lot of overlap between employees and management.
Mhm.
So a lot of times, when we think about why change efforts fail, even with a good strategy, how do we get alignment across the whole organization, across hierarchies?
Mhm. Yeah. So again, the vision has to be set forth early on,
Mm-hmm.
and I think early on the leader has to set forth, hey, this is what the mission is, and bringing in people who appear to be or in alignment with that,
Mm-hmm.
so that has to be set forth early on. Then also in terms of the leader, for example, Roy Disney, the brother of Walt Disney, he said creativity is the skill with the maximum shelf life. There has to be some flexibility on the leader to take information from his or her team members,
Mm-hmm.
because especially if they are where the rubber meets the road, why wouldn't I not want to glean from their creativity? So I tend to have more of a participating leadership style,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
because most importantly is the execution and the completion of the mission, whether I'm the one saying, hey, let's do this, or whether one of my team members is saying, hey, let's do this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And thinking about your transition then from boardroom to classroom.
Mhm.
Um, so, as an educator, what leadership lessons do you see students struggling to grasp early on?
um, the most important one, especially at that level, is they get perfection paralysis. And I think most people don't understand like how much often the great leaders have failed. Like, and again, going back to having a high emotional bank account. For example, if I see a young lady and I approach this young lady and she say, nope, you're not my type, you're ugly, I don't like you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I have a high self-esteem, I have a positive self-image, high self-confidence, I'm gonna say thank you for your time and walk off.
Mm-hmm.
But if that's low and her rejection, it may overdraft my emotional bank account. I may call her out of her name. I may lash out at her, right? So a leader has to have a high emotional bank account. Therefore we don't get perfection paralysis. So I think, a lot of my students, they feel like everything has to be perfect. And that is something that I try to unteach or unlearn them, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Because
that's tough.
again, even after this show, you have to edit it, polish it up, so that's the most important thing. And all of the successful people that I've met, like they just wouldn't stop.
Yeah, and it's tough because, being in a hyper virtual world, especially,
Mhm.
we don't see the mistakes. And to be honest, even the mistakes that people post online are curated mistakes where it's like, oh, look at me spill this tray, but I'm doing
Correct.
it with my hair made up and my makeup. Like,
Correct.
it's like, wait, what?
Right. Right. No authenticity. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, how do you I guess how do you even help them see that that part of the journey is not only okay but necessary when they don't really get to see it from the people they do admire?
Right. Yeah. It's definitely a challenge, and so what I try to do is just as we do projects, and of course when I grade them, and when I show them like where they were wrong at, we take a look at it, we take a deep dive into it,
Mm-hmm.
excuse me, and I show them like, okay, you were wrong here, but this indicates to me that you were thinking. We just have to change the way that you're thinking, the way that you're approaching this problem, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny. I'm just the way you said that made me think of something. We overheard my stepson talking to his friend one time, and he
Mhm.
told him, "You're not stupid. You're just thinking wrong."
Okay, there you go.
That's like the funniest. He's 12. He's 13 now, but at the time he
Right.
was 12, we were like, kids are sometimes philosophers, and we're just
Correct.
here for the ride. Um,
I think it was Aristotle who said, "The purpose of knowledge is not knowledge. The purpose of knowledge is action."
mm, that part, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one thing in higher education that was a big deal for me was really trying to bridge that theory and practitionership. I think it's one thing to learn how things work, but then to apply it in the real world.
Right.
How do you help them take what they're learning in the classroom and then use it in real life?
Yeah. So now most of my projects are group projects.
Mhm.
That's because in the real world, business is a team sport, right? It's a team sport. So I do a lot. We look at a lot of case studies. Like I'll show them a documentary, and I'll group them together, and they'll execute assignments as if they were a consulting team.
Hmm.
And
That's
so
good practice. Yeah.
yeah, so I make sure that everything that we do is centered around real world experiences and real world relevant and contemporary business case studies.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then, so what mindset shift helps people move from learning about leadership again to actually embodying it? So these like practices they're doing, but like leadership almost seems like, I think some people think it's innate, right? Like you
Mhm.
can't learn it. It's just I was
Yeah.
born a born leader. That's even a saying. So yeah, how do you help them actually learn about it and applying it?
Yeah. So I think in terms of mind shift, it's important to just know that you can grow. Like, first of all, being very honest with yourself about the tools that you have and the things that you need to do. In other words, so in change management, how do you go from current state to future state?
Mm-hmm.
And that gap is what is the thing that we need to do to develop ourselves as leaders. So not being afraid of that gap, right? Being able to ask the questions, also being able to take constructive feedback, and lastly, being able to take action. Most people don't take enough consistent, sustained action to make the changes and to develop into the leadership, to the leader that they need to be.
Yeah, and that keyword there is consistent because
Mhm.
again, you can take the trainings and the workshops and this and that, but if you're not consistently practicing,
Right.
it makes zero difference.
Absolutely.
Um, yeah, what do you think about? I find that in certain organizations, it's natural to move up the corporate ladder, right? That's kind of
Mhm.
everyone's goal. Um, but a lot of times there's not the proper leadership training. Like you're getting promoted because of the skills and outputs you bring to the company, but then now
Mhm.
you're in this position and you realize I don't know how to manage people at
Right.
this level. How do
Mhm.
you help people with that transition when they're not, they're just moving up kind of blindly?
Yeah, that's tough if you don't know how to manage people. Because I kind of went through that myself. I found myself in a position where I was managing people who were a lot smarter than me, had a lot more experience than me. The only difference is I had more confidence than them. So I was kind of faking it, you know, and listen, confidence is confidence, and that worked. But there will be times where, because I think I was suffering from imposter syndrome. So I would be in these meetings, and I would be giving directives and giving information, and they would listen to me. But the whole time I'm talking to these people, I would be like, man, I can't believe these people are listening to me. Seriously, like I tell you this. So when I first set out to try to raise capital, I flew to meet with a private equity firm in Chicago, and so my former mentor had prepped me. He said, "This is a big firm." He said, if you go in there, he said you can't ask for anything under $10 million. They're not going to do business with you. And then he said if they put you in a big conference room, they respect you. He said they got food and everything. He said they look at you as a big dog. And he said, now, what I need you to do when you go in there, sit at the head of the table. He said, even if your name is not there, he said, because you're signifying them that you're in charge. So I fly to Chicago, I walk in with my nice suit, with my nice briefcase, and they take me back to this big conference room. They had food and drinks everywhere. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, man. And sure enough, my name was on the side. They had everybody's name plates, and I go to the head of the table,
Okay.
and I put my name tag over there. And all these executives come in, and they turn the monitors on, and I'm like, whoa! And my heart started beating. And when I tell you that imposter syndrome showed up, and
Mm-hmm.
so all the cameras come on, and they say, okay, how much money you looking to raise? And I went to stuttering, and I said $500,000 to $2 million. And that gentleman said, that's it. We thought you wanted to do real business. You in the wrong place. And he closed his briefcase and he walked out.
Oh my God.
I'm serious. He walked out. And the other guy was like, hey, well, we don't do deals that small, but here's somebody that you can contact and reach out to, and they may be able to help you out. And he said, oh, and we reserved this meeting room for you the rest of the day. You can work out of here. And everybody left.
Well, dang.
Yeah. But my imposter syndrome,
Mm.
but managing people, you just have to kind of get in there, and I think social skills, interpersonal skills, communication skills, and knowing what you're good at, like, and
Mhm.
trusting yourself. That's the only way to grow in that area.
Mhm.
Because, okay, are you familiar with Patrick Lencioni's Five Dysfunctions of a Team?
Oh my gosh. I can't keep adding on to my reading list, man. I have a lot going on too.
Okay, gotcha. So I use Patrick Lencioni's Five Dysfunctions of a Team. So I use quite a few, tools to help me get through,
Hmm.
but it's just really all about, understanding the mission, understanding the desired outcome, what standard do you have, and putting that out to the people. If they respect you and trust you, they'll get it done. But
Hmm.
also, you can't be afraid of conflict. That's one of the five dysfunctions of a team is fear of conflict. You can't be afraid to say, "Hey, listen, sir or ma'am, like, this is not the standard. I need you to redo this." That's important, because when I
Hmm.
first started off in the army, my mentor told me, he said, "You're too nice to your soldiers." He said, "They're gonna run over you." He said, "You're far too nice." He said, "You can't be." He said, "You don't have to be mean, but you have to be firm."
Well, talk a little. This is the resolution room. This is where we thrive with the conflict resolution and communication skills. So, talk to me a little bit about how you worked through that. Then.
Yeah, okay. So I'll tell you a story. So when I went to Germany, I had been in the army 3 years. I had got promoted. And so when I get there, my supervisor, his name was Frankie Lewis. If you out there, shout out to you, Frankie Lewis. This dude was like 6'5". He was a huge guy.
Hmm.
And he was overweight. And that's something that the army don't do. But he knew his job. He was a technician. He said,
Okay.
"Hey, I'm in charge here." And he said, "I'm gonna ask you to do something. And if I ask you to do it and you don't do it, I'm gonna start telling." That's how he introduced himself to me. So I
Okay.
said, "Okay." Now I already knew. I said, "Yeah, this guy here." So all of the soldiers that we had 4 soldiers. They were also overweight, which is a no-go in the army, but they knew their job. He had trained them very well. So I would ask the soldiers, say, "Hey, go do this." They would skirt my leadership and go and say, "Hey, Sergeant Lewis, can we do that?" And he would say, "Yeah, go ahead and do it." So this is what I did. I came in the office one day and I said, "Hey, listen, Sergeant Lewis been in the Army 10 years. I've been in the Army 5. I said, if anybody go to Sergeant Lewis without coming to me, it's going to be a problem. I said, because this man has served his time, it's time for me to step up and alleviate him and lead the way." Oh, he loved that. It kind of stroked his ego.
Okay.
So I set up a barrier, so they had to come to me. So
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
I had been in aviation refueling. We was in ground refueling, and I didn't know anything about ground refueling. The soldiers actually knew more than me. But the weakness was they were overweight, and I was in mint condition. So I helped all of my soldiers. Each one of them lost like 10 to 15 pounds, and that was a big thing in the army. And so
Mm-hmm.
I used physical fitness to build that relationship with them, you know.
Wow.
And so that changed the whole outcome and the whole culture of our office. So they lost weight. Sergeant Lewis began to lose weight, So I had to figure out what I had to do to get around his authoritative leadership.
Wow. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's a good story. I like that. Okay. Um, so as we start to wrap up, the last thing I want to kind of talk about is building resilient leaders for the future. So we'll kind of go back to what you're doing with the students and the youth and
Mhm.
teaching. Um, so as you're preparing them, what separates resilient leaders from high performers who eventually burn out? Like, how do you tell the difference?
Yeah. So resilient leaders, they usually keep a consistent pace, and that's something that I had to do. For example, like I'm very big on goals. You know, there was a guy I listened to him the other day. He said that he interviewed the owner of LinkedIn, and he said once the owner of LinkedIn, he sold his company for like 26 billion to Microsoft, right? And he
Mhm.
asked him like, "Okay, so what does the next year look like for you?" And he said, "Next year," he said, "I'm focused on the next decade." Uh, Jeff Bezos, he said, most people underestimate excuse me, he said most people overestimate what they can do in a year, but they underestimate what they can do in 5 to 10 years. So I had to like take that on for myself as well. So consistency and running your race at your pace is the most important thing. That's how you build those resilient leaders, right? Because I used to be one of those people, like I felt like I had to get a lot of stuff done in a short amount of time. I mean, I would be going to the gym at 2 in the morning, you know, going to the gym at 2 in the morning, start my work day at 5 or 6 a.m. and getting all this stuff done, pretty much functioning like I was still in the army. So I think just having that consistency and running your race at your pace is the most important thing to build that resiliency. And also getting and celebrating those small wins.
Absolutely. So that's the quote of the day: run your race at your pace. And yes, that is very important. I think that so often, I caught this with myself too, and I didn't really realize it was happening. But one thing that's kind of tricky when you are goal oriented is you're just setting one goal after another. You kind of like reach one milestone and you don't really properly celebrate that. You're just kind of like, okay, what's next? Or you're just working on the next thing.
Yeah.
And it really is important to take a step back and really understand what you just did or what you just accomplished, and not just blindly chase goals. Right. Yeah. I think this is the year too. I've kind of focused more on less goal setting and more systems building. So
Absolutely.
yeah, really putting things in place to help me achieve the things that I want to do, and not just declare it.
Yeah, and again, going back to running your race, because I used to be, I think I was guilty of comparing myself to other people. Like which, don't get me wrong, like I think it could be healthy if it's like, okay, you know what?
Yeah.
But I was like, oh man, he's done that. I should have been did this, or I should have been done that. Or I'm way behind. Like, nah, man, you got to run your race. You don't have their obstacles, you don't have their skills, you don't have their network. You have to like do what you can where you are with what you have.
Yeah, we were talking about social media earlier. That's a big thing. I think that's one thing that's interesting too. Even as a fully functioning adult, you still get caught up in that. And I'm like, why am I know better? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I know that half of this is fake, but even like the real stuff that you do see, you still shouldn't be comparing yourself to other people when you're starting in two completely different places. Circumstances are different. You just don't even know their story, So it's so interesting. Even this whole podcasting journey has been interesting, and I still struggle with a lot of it, especially like the imposter syndrome as well. But it seems like it's funny because when you read the statistics, they say like majority of podcasters, new ones, don't get past 3 episodes.
Okay.
And I'm now recording for season 3, and I do 25 episodes per in less than a year, by the way.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, I feel like, okay, what am I doing really? Because it seems like everyone has a podcast, and someone's on season 6 and someone has 100 episodes, and it just never ends.
One of my friends wanted to do a podcast, and I was just like,
not so bad. We honestly have so many more resources. Like, it's just the same way, like I'm sure you can attest, like same with a dissertation. I'm like, how do people used to go do a bibliography by hand, like one bit, like how do you do these things? Like we got our PhDs in good times where we have more resources.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Same with podcasting. I'm like, there's so many tools now to kind of help you do it a lot easier than, I mean, the fact that we can kind of do it on our own and not have to immediately hire an engineer, it's a long ways.
Absolutely.
I told you, when you're ready, just let me know. I'll tell you exactly what to download and use. All right. So when you think about legacy, what do you hope leaders focus on more intentionally?
What do I hope? I hope that leaders will just focus on just developing new leaders. I think oftentimes leaders get to the top and they isolate themselves. They don't want to share the information with the next generation. I think that is so important. Because there's been times where I've gone to people and I'm like, hey, will you be my mentor? Will you teach me this? And they just wouldn't do it. Like, and that's honestly why I get so much joy out of teaching and talking to younger people, because like I'm telling you, like I've gone to people who are in my lane, and let me say this: nobody owes you anything. So
That's true.
let me preface my comments by that. No
Yeah.
one owes you anything. Oh, you know what? I'm gonna say this. I'm not gonna say no. I got to say this. I went to this event and I met this gentleman. I'm gonna have to keep this story kind of because I
Okay.
don't want to.
Names, no, no.
Yeah, I went to this event. And this gentleman was, an investor, and he was like, "Oh, we have millions of dollars earmarked for businesses like yours." And I said, "Okay." I said, "Well, let's have a conversation." And he was like, "Okay." He said, "Well, here's my card. This is what I did. I took a picture of his card and I gave it back to him." He said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "A man of your stature, nobody ever gives you your card back." I said, "So you'll never forget me." So I took a picture of his card and I said,
Mhm.
"I'm gonna do three things." I said, "I'm gonna email you, I'm gonna text you, and I'm gonna call you." And I turned to the audience and I said, "I'm gonna do what?" And they said, "He gonna email you, he gonna text you, and he gonna call you." So we started laughing.
Mhm.
Next day, I email, I text, and I call him. No response. 5 months later, we're at an event and I see this gentleman. And I said, "Brother, I told you I was going to email you, text you, and call you." And that man looked at me and said, "I never met you before." And I pulled out
Oh,
my phone and I showed him a picture of his card. I showed
yeah.
him a picture of the email. And that man said, "Brother, I don't think I met you before. You got the wrong person." These are
Wow.
facts. These are facts. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And again, nobody owes you anything, but don't
Yeah.
volunteer me lies. But I think it's important, if you are a true leader, develop the next generation, give them the information they need so that they can go on and be a better version of themselves. Like that's the best legacy that a leader could have.
Absolutely. And just even building on that, I think in the entrepreneur community, I've
Mhm,
been learning that we are each other's best resources in so many
mhm,
areas. And some people who are a little more advanced than you or have been doing this longer, same thing. It's kind of hard sometimes to get them to want to actually sit down for coffee and chat, blah, blah,
mhm.
blah. But when you get the ones that do, and you're just sharing, I can't tell you how many people I've talked to just about starting a podcast. Whether they actually do it is on them. But I'm not going to sit here. I had to learn all this on my own,
Sure.
and I've been doing this in less than a year. So if I can help the next person just skip trying to try out 20 tools and you go straight
Right.
to one that works for you or whatever it is, there's enough out here for all of us. Like, why
Right.
would I try to? I'm not the only podcaster in the world. Like, why would I try to?
Look at what Steve Jobs did for Mark Zuckerberg. I mean, for a while, Mark Zuckerberg was dressing just like Steve Jobs. You know what I'm saying? You'll
Yeah.
often hear Warren Buffett talk about Benjamin Graham and how much he meant to him. Like those things are really important. So yeah,
Absolutely.
I think that's the best legacy that a leader could have.
Right. And so thinking about that legacy, what does strong leadership look like to you in the next decade as we evolve AI, new generation of kids, just all of it?
In the next decade, the 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 top leaders will be able to deal with change.
Mm-hmm.
Because over the next decade, I mean, we've had and are experiencing a lot of change, and it's only going to become more prevalent as AI becomes more prevalent as well. So I think just being able to change and keep up with the rate of change. The greatest CEO of the last 100 years, um, Jack Welch, he said, when the rate of change outside of an organization is greater or faster than the rate of change within an organization, the end is near.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And what has leadership taught you about yourself that no title or achievement ever could?
Um, it's a great question. What leadership taught me? I'll be honest. This I don't want to sound cliche, but I really believe I could do anything.
Okay.
I really believe I can do anything. Uh, I just have to if you just stay focused and keep your cadence, and because Marcus Aurelius said, the obstacle is the way. The impediment to action becomes action. So now I look at challenges and obstacles as a way just to strengthen me, to develop my creativity, to impact my resiliency. So now, like, I process these things in a whole different way. So I really feel like I can do anything. I feel like the future is bright, you know?
And in alignment with the Resolution Room podcast, I have
Mhm.
to end with a signature resolution question. So, when you think about the future of leadership and organizational culture, what is the single non negotiable shift you believe leaders must make to move from reactive management toward meaningful transformation?
To move from reactive management to meaningful transformation. Um,
Take your time.
um, I would say it has to be going back to what I said about creativity. Creativity is the skill with the maximum shelf life. So welcoming diverse thought and diverse opinions and diverse perspectives from their team members. You know, I think that's how we get from reactive to being proactive.
Okay. This has been a pleasure. Where can everybody follow you and your work and tell us what's next for you?
um, on Instagram at I am Team Think Big or www.teamthinkbig.com. And what's next for me? So my second book, I'm working on that right now, and it's called This One's for You: Unbeatable, Unbreakable, Unstoppable. It should be ready to go for 1 July 2026.
Okay. And remind us of the first book.
The first book is This One's for You: Life, Leadership, and a High Emotional Bank Account.
Okay, now. It was an absolute pleasure. If this conversation gave you something to reflect on, consider taking a moment to rate and subscribe. It helps more people find their way into these conversations. And if you're looking for a space to actually put this work into practice, you're invited to join the Resolution Society on the School Community platform. It's our space for real-time reflection, dialogue, support, and growth. If you'd like to bring a conversation like this into your organization or community, you can submit a speaking request. And if you prefer to start on your own, visit the Resolution Library for a collection of digital resources designed to help you put this into practice one step at a time. Access to our community, speaking requests, and online resources can be found at our website linked in the show notes. Until next time, keep building in the quiet because that's what will carry you forward.